Hiya! Welcome to LSB Feasters radio channel, where we keep great radio from the past alive. And today, we're going to New York City and News Radio 88 WCBS. WCBS was a staple for New York City for decades, delivering breaking news and information to its listeners. WCBS was known for its in-depth coverage of local, national, and international events. The station has played a vital role in keeping New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut informed. WCBS had a team of experienced journalists and reporters like Charles Osgood, Lou Adler, Jim Donnelly, Pat Parson, Ben Farnsworth, Don Swain, Jeff Kaplan, Wayne Cabot, and so many other names have kept New Yorkers informed. The station's commitment to providing reliable and accurate news has made it a trusted source for countless New Yorkers, from the station's launch in 1967 till it came to an end in 2024. Now, on this recording, WCBS morning man Wayne Cabot talks about his childhood memories of WCBS and how it was his goal to someday work there. Well, Cabot did eventually land a gig there in 1988 and then spent the next 36 years working at the station. A big thank you to Scott Brown for passing along this piece of audio from the Don Swain collection. Let's give it a listen as Wayne Cabot talks about News Radio 88 WCBS, New York.
Summer night from Olivia Newton-John and John Travolta, WABC.
Not many 13-year-old kids growing up in northern New Jersey tune the dial to AM 880. That's as true today as it was in 1977, when I discovered the beacon that would call me to New York radio. I wonder why sometimes, as my teenage friends were out there listening to Rock FM, I found this station so appealing.
Jackson, CBS News.
This is News 88, WCBS in New York, the last day of November, and it's a Thursday, 47 degrees right now, 8 Celsius at 6:30. Stories making headlines. President Carter denies reports.
Maybe because Mom was raising me alone and WCBS filled my room with a comforting paternal voice. I don't know, I'll leave that to Dr. Phil to figure out, but what I can tell you for sure is that WCBS exposed me to amazingly good radio.
In the headlines on the hour, Alphonse DeMarco has defeated Senator Jacob Javits in New York's Republican senatorial primary. Senator Javits is conceding now.
The air talent uniformly was superb. Each had a distinct style and personality. Some anchors engaged me as an old friend. Others told me the news with rock-solid authority.
6 minutes after 7, Friday the 22nd. Used to be George Washington's birthday. Still is, but the American Congress...
A few were adept at both.
Monday,
Jim Donnelly, morning anchor from 1972 to 1992, was unparalleled in his ability to be both warm and credible.
Morning, and he went up and he came right down again and sat down, and he's currently over at the heliport on the East River scraping the ice off because we got a storm brewing through here. A couple of trains connected with that are 45 minutes late, and this is only the beginning.
More than anything else, WCBS in the 70s and early 80s conveyed a bigger-than-life sound. Tight, well-produced, and the audio element said class. To this day, everybody can recall Eric Seday's 4-note sounder arrangement and Steve Carman's News Is jingle.
News is. Health is. How to get you in and out of town is. No matter where the news is made, we're here to tell it best. WCBS New York. WCBS New York.
Underneath it all, on the radio, was a teletype sound effect kept at a low, almost subliminal level. It conjured up a bustling newsroom with wire machines in overdrive, copy editors running around, pencils tucked behind their ears, reporters working phones for late details. The audio production, as much as the on-air presentation, screamed to me, listen or you might miss something. And I listened all right, doing homework, getting dressed. It got a bit obsessive, and I can recall why that happened. In one of the rare technical gaffes on WCBS, I heard the headline sounder play in the clear, no one talking. And it occurred to me I could steal that sounder and use it to practice reading news on my own to make it sound more official as I grabbed my Radio Shack tape recorder.
Monday morning at News 88, a minute to 7 o'clock, Wayne Cabot with the headline stories. Thousands of Laotian civilian officials and the military officers have been in detention since the communists seized power in 1975.
So at 59, 15, 30, and 45, I would tape WCBS waiting for someone to screw up and play all or part of the sounder in the clear. It took months, but it happened. And quite accidentally, I was left with a treasure trove of air checks along the way.
I'm Charles Osgood, CBS News.
15 minutes and 30 seconds tonight at WCBS, 35 degrees and clouds in Manhattan. Good morning, I'm Jim Donnelly.
Good morning, I'm Lou Adler.
Here's the morning lineup on WCBS. Lou Adler, Jim Donnelly.
Steve Bush in the traffic watch helicopter.
Ed Ingalls with sports.
Gordon Williams about business. Art Athens on the news beat.
Join them all for news and information you need.
CBS, let's see how traffic is going. It's been a pretty rough morning so far. Neil Bush in the chopper.
Hey, look, he's ready again.
I'm Christopher Glenn, CBS News.
You're listening to News Radio 88 WCBS, Monday, the 7th of April, and the 7th day of the mass transit strike, 6 minutes after 7. I'm Jim Donnelly.
Good morning, I'm Lou Adler. There will be more talks aimed at trying to settle that very difficult dispute, but that won't be until later today.
WCBS News Radio 88, the big number for news in New York. And our number outside, 45 degrees. And that's what it is in Midtown Manhattan on the 29th of November, a Wednesday. I'm Ben Farnsworth.
I'm Pat Parson. Nice to have you with us in WCBS New York, 6:30.
Headline stories, rescue workers began the grim task of finding the victims after 2 earthquakes rocked downtown Mexico.
A very good morning on this Monday, the 4th of December. Begin of Israel sending Sadat of Egypt a response to latest Egyptian peace ideas. Commerce Secretary Krebs says U.S. is lifting the ban on exporting American oil equipment to Russia. Jeffrey in the Lion's Den with Jason Robards coming up, and Steve Flanders has his Reporter's Journal. Talks about President Carter and the fight against inflation. 62 degrees, very mild day, and periods of rain on and off. Good morning, I'm Ralph Howard. Stay with us as CBS covers the world at 11.
CBS News.
Good afternoon, I'm Bill Thayen. Saturday, October 27th, and now CBS covers the world at 3.
CBS News, the first day of martial law in South Korea since last night's slaying of President Park Chung-hee is over. It passed peacefully. I'm David Jackson reporting on the CBS radio.
On the primaries today in New York and Connecticut, here's Harvey Huffman.
Thank you, John. Campaign 80, the New York and Connecticut primaries, is sponsored by Lebenthal.
A pleasant evening to you. I'm John Wedgwood.
David Jackson, CBS News.
And this is WCBS, All News Radio in New York. I'm Alan Shaw. Our weather forecast for tonight.
I'm Palmer Payne. In the headlines, government troops and leftist guerrillas.
Chick Anderson at Aqueduct.
Chicks employed by the New York Racing Association. It's 17 minutes after 2 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Greg Baker.
I'm Rob Armstrong, CBS News.
A very timely story. Trout season began in New York State on the 1st of April. 6 after 9 at WCBS. Good Sunday morning. Happy Easter to you. I'm Gary Moore. We're going to have a mostly sunny day. In fact, I think you could describe the day as glorious. It'll be in the mid-60s later on, a little bit cooler along the shore. Perfect weather for the Easter parade, which gets underway in about 2 hours.
14 minutes before noon. I'm Gil Gross. Sunny, 28 degrees. Let's see what's happening in All News 88.
Here are stories making headlines on the top of the hour as Monday morning, the 7th day of April, 1980 begins.
Good morning. I'm Bob Glenn. Now stay tuned as CBS covers the world at midnight.
CBS News. Arab guerrillas have crossed the border into Israel and have taken some hostages. I'm Paul Lockwood reporting on the CBS Radio Network.
I'm Christopher Glenn, CBS News.
Among our headline stories as we approach the hour, Secretary of State Vance is formally asking the International Olympic Committee to cancel or move the Summer Olympics out of Moscow. New Jersey Governor Byrne reported considering a complete restructure of the Casino Control Commission. The Islanders are playing Quebec at the Coliseum, and at the Garden, the Knicks are taking on Detroit. I'm Don Swaim. It's Saturday, the 9th day of February, and it's 9 o'clock. Good evening to you. I'm Don Swaim, WCBS Radio News in New York at 10:06 in our forecast. Well, a little bit of snow, perhaps, overnight.
I'm Jack Welby, WCBS News Time, 1:30.
In the headlines on the hour.
Dropping to end the 70s. This is Rich Lamb in Times Square. We'll have more coming up.
And also coming up, 1980. In 10 seconds, it'll be 12 o'clock midnight, the first day of the new year. Good morning, I'm Robert Vaughn. Now stay tuned as CBS covers the world at 12 midnight.
Must have been a heck of a party. He was trying to say this is WCBS New York. I'm not going to ad-lib the little ding-ding-ding sound. It is Tuesday, September 20th, 11:31 is the time. I'm Tom Franklin. A good evening to you. Some of the stories we're watching tonight. President Reagan and Congress have arrived at a compromise that allows our Marines to remain in Lebanon for another year and a half.
Not to mention tons of reporters doing news, weather, traffic, sports, business, and features. I save those cassettes in a box, alternately in hot attics and damp basements, and as you can hear, to my amazement, most still sounded pretty good when I put them on CD recently. I would have taken better care of them had I known I'd become the unofficial archivist of WCBS. And I have rebroadcast my old tapes numerous times when the Yankees won the World Series after a long drought.
Congratulations, Yankees. The party begins Tuesday.
We'll start at Battery Park. It'll go right up Broadway with a grand ticker tape parade.
There goes the styrofoam, and here comes the Yankees.
One of those great canyon parades that happen only in New York City.
Don't miss a minute of it. WCBS will be in the air and on the street as the ticker tape falls on the world champion 96 Yankees.
You know what that tape was, that muffled sound in the middle of that message?
Uh-huh.
It was the 1977 ticker tape parade. Well, that wasn't the last time. 78 there was, but that was way back in the 70s in any event. WCBS News died.
The news on us, headlines. A lot of snow on us today.
Late great Pat Parson, dead at the age of 65. Joining us with a look back and a tribute, WCBS newsman Wayne Cabot. You knew Pat.
Pat is one of the big reasons that I got into this business. I recall being a kid in New Jersey, putting 88 on, back then News Radio 88, and he was different than just some guy reading the news. He really presented... It was a show when he was on. It was entertaining. I mean, sure, he brought you the news and did it very well. It was a tremendous newsreader, a good newsman, but he had so much flair. Pat Parson. I mean, he sounded like a guy who would come in, would have news copy in one hand and a martini glass in the other. He was like Martin and Sinatra. You know, he had that whole thing going on, and it worked for him very well. And of course, he was paired with Ben Farnsworth for many, many years in the afternoon, and the two of them, they sounded like brothers on the radio. They just came across so smooth, so natural, and you know, they were both very strong personalities, Pat and Ben, and it really was a tribute to both of them that it sounded as good as it was, because there was that tug of war, and it was just radio magic when the two of them were on.
And you're staying up to the minute, of course, right here on News 88. Our time, 4:28.
Oh, Bob Harris, I spent all day yesterday shoveling out my driveway, and I didn't have to. The rain took it away.
Hey, listen, you don't have as big a problem as Lou Adler. Lou Adler spent $10 to have somebody clear his driveway away. He told me this morning on the air, and then it was all washed away last night.
He can afford it.
All right.
Well, he's got one of those big, long driveways. I got a short little puny one, you know.
34 degrees and mostly cloudy now. The sun setting in the western sky, peeking through some of those clouds, and we're underway now.
Owned and operated by the Columbia Broadcasting
I was lucky to learn radio when I did, when it was transitioning from the days of staff announcers.
Transcribe in New York City.
On your New York 880 station to Brighton.
When everything sounded so big, so polished.
So long until tomorrow. Lowell Thomas in the news brought to you
When technicians ran boards cleanly, when ad rates were high and commercial inventories were low outside of drive time. It was an ad executive who arranged my first tour of WCBS in 1978. She was my grandfather's neighbor in Lake Opatcon, New Jersey. Sitting in her big screened-in front porch one summer night, I asked her about buying time on radio and TV. She gave me a stack of advertising age magazines and offered to get me inside any station that I wanted. Right away I said WCBS, and she said, "Oh, that's no problem at all. I'll get you in Channel 2. I clarified myself that I meant News 88. She tried to steer me towards television. Made for a much better tour, she explained, but I told her no, it was WCBS AM that I really wanted to see. So she gave me a name of a WCBS account executive and told me to show up Monday morning at 9. Dad drove me in from Hunterdon County through the Holland Tunnel in rush hour traffic up 6th Avenue to 52nd Street, and there, that big granite building known as Black Rock. Seeing the shiny brass letters CBS above the revolving doors, looking up at the outside wall of the skyscraper, entering the grand lobby, all confirmed what I'd heard on the radio. This place was big. Years later, when I walked through those same revolving doors to begin an anchor shift, I would sometimes catch a whiff of something. I don't know, carpeting, floor wax, cigarette smoke. It would bring me right back and remind me of that first impressive visit. When Dad and I rode the elevator to the 16th floor, a receptionist sat outside the main door in the lobby, and above her were the current readings from the WCBS Weather Center, the rooftop observatory, which at the time was managed by Bob Harris just beyond the station entrance. To the left of the solid black door was a giant three-dimensional 88. 2 8s, 6 feet tall, resembling city skyscrapers. But getting through the doors that summer day was not easy. The receptionist wasn't told about her appointment, nor was the salesperson whose name Grandpa's friend dropped on the front porch. Can't recall who he was, but he had it made. He was one of those salaried salespeople in the days before straight commission. And he must have had a lot of free time, because he immediately cleared hours to play escort to these two strangers from New Jersey. He took us down the halls, past the artistic photographs of reporters on the wall and announcers, showed us the studios, the newsroom, the control rooms. Then he took us across town to the CBS Broadcast Center to see Channel 2 TV, the soaps. But as impressive as TV was, and it was radio that got me hooked.
I'm Ben Farnsworth.
Ben Farnsworth was anchoring at WCBS that morning, filling in for Jim Donnelly during the 9 a.m. hour. I recall that he waved to us through the glass, and I self-consciously waved back. Looking behind me at the bank of clattering teletype machines, I asked the salesman, why with these soundproof windows and doors did the sound bleed through on the air? Well, he told me the tickers are pretty darn loud. I'd learned later that he was wrong, that it was a looped tape in the control room. It was a sound effect cleverly engineered to fade in when the anchor's mic was keyed on. They'd fade it out during live commercials with a toggle switch, and they'd fade it back on again when they were done with the commercial. It was 1988 when the teletype faded out for good, when the news director, Harvey Nagler, arrived. The technician at the time, Dwight Taylor, said that Harvey wanted to differentiate WCBS from WINS, whose ticker sound was turned up so loud it was irritating. Ours was a quieter, subliminal version, and I do miss it. But I guess the rattle of antique wire machines conveys old more than it does news.
Good evening.
It is the vindication of my station obsession when I got hired in 1988 and got to anchor with some of these legends. For example, the night that I got the phone call asking me if I could be there at 2 a.m. to sit and fill in with Jim Donnelly. There was no way I was going to get to sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling all night long. I remember that.
Good morning, I'm Jim Donnelly.
Good morning, I'm Wayne Cabot. Stories.
I managed to mumble through in a daze, snapping out of it at the very end in a moment of fan nirvana when Jim and I signed off, and Pat Parsons signed on, reading his headlines and pouring it on with more flair than ever.
Good morning, everyone. These are the top stories from Stockholm to Oslo to Trenton.
He remembered me as the kid who rode the bus in from Jersey to watch Pat and Ben. And now, there I was between Pat and Jim, Parson and Donnelly, whose answers to my fan mail I still have. Pat encouraged me in perfect Pat style to never be afraid to express yourself ever. Jim remarked that I certainly have the name for radio.
I'm Tom Franklin. Now stay tuned to CBS.
Tom was as smooth as can be. So was his partner in PM Drive for the latter half of the 80s.
Rita Sands, headlines coming up.
People today still talk about her amazing sound. And Tom, he might have been the funniest person ever to sit behind the mic. But on the air, he was straight as an arrow. Rita and Tom replaced Pat and Ben. Pat was put on nights in a contract dispute, and he was on middays when I got there. Ben had left for local TV by then. Ben would come back later and tell me that for all the time he was on Channel 4, people still remembered him best from his days on the radio. So it was fitting and exciting when he came back part-time in the 1990s.
Animal keeps horning in here. Let's go to Lou Timolad.
That's Neil Bushenchoff Radio.
Over the Palisades Interstate Parkway. Here
Sunny and seasonable. All right, and that is Craig Allen. Let me get back into the right decade. 68 degrees and mostly sunny. Lou Timolad, 1985, 86.
I remember him up in the helicopter for all those years, but that was, a couple of decades ago, Ben. We're almost in the new millennium here. I learned a lot working with Ben. He also remembers me as that kid from Jersey, the tall kid with the news radio obsession.
Well, I'll tell you one other thing. Wayne Cabot, when I started there in the early 70s, when I know Wayne Cabot came in when he was 15 years old, and I think Rich Lamb brought him in on a tour, and he sat in the studio with us. And, I mean, it's remarkable. It was remarkable to me the first time I heard him on the air at 88, and I said, hey, I remember that kid coming in and just watching.
Yeah, we're all a bunch of radio geeks.
As good as it was, in many ways, news radio has improved. The format moves faster, the writing is tighter, the anchors are more versatile, running boards and editing on the fly, and the station has become more focused as the audience becomes more fragmented. Times have changed, but there is a special place and time that lives on. I was hired as an anchor a month or two after the sound began to change. We still had the famous old sounders for a while. The next sounder package lasted less than a year.
WCBS News Radio 88.
It is going to be a chilly end to the month of September.
Good afternoon. I'm Deborah Rodriguez. WCBS News Time, 1 o'clock.
CBS News, I'm Christopher Glenn.
Funny how the pendulum swings. The sounds we use now have that retro 70s feel to them.
News, traffic, and weather. On air, online. We are News Radio, WCBS New York.
As we approach 5 o'clock, here are the top stories from WCBS. Sonar scans off Cape May find no sign of a Staten Island scout who fell off.
The emphasis on our style is again toward conversational, authoritative, friendly. How people use media is changing every day, but WCBS, even with its little changes here and there over the years, is remarkably consistent at its core. And I, for one, am deeply proud to keep the torch burning.
WCBS New York.